Hey, David Carroll here. I'm going to show you how to install Visual Studio on a brand new Windows 10 environment. You can see that I'm getting messages that are just there and all this crud that it comes with. But anyway, you can clean that up. So I'm going to start up Microsoft Edge in this environment. And that's the only browser we've got right now. I normally use Chrome, but this is all I've got. So rather than install that, I'll just do it from here. So I'm going to go to github.com BVCMS/BVCMS, and here is the repository for it, and the quick start guide is down here. So this says to install Visual Studio Community 2017 and SQL Server Express 2016. You can install a full SQL Express, obviously, and you can install one of the enterprise versions or professional versions of Visual Studio, but these two will work just fine, at least for developing purposes. So let's install this Visual Studio Community 2017. And so I'm going to go here, free download, and this is going to download a quick installer file. It takes about a minute to download this installer. So I'll click save, and it's going to, oh, and then run. Actually, it doesn't take very long to install the bootstrapper, but the installer itself is going to be installed now. So after I continue and agree with this, it'll take about a minute. So I'm going to hit pause, and then I will, I think I hit pause up here. Okay, it's finished installing the installer, so it's starting up the installer now. And here where you choose your options under workloads here. I'm going to choose, this is required, ASP.NET and web development. If you want to do some Python debugging for Python scripts that you can load into your own database to react to certain things or run special reports and so forth, you can debug those things using this Python development. It's not required to actually use those Python things, but if you want to debug, you would install that as well. So click install, and this is what's going to take quite some time, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. I don't know. I've never sat around and waited for it. I've always just gone and had a cup of coffee or done something else while it's doing all this part. So I'm going to hit pause on the recording, and I'll see you back when this thing's finished. Okay, the installation succeeded. That didn't take very long. So this is done, and I can close this. Now, Visual Studio should be in the list here. Yeah, there it is. Visual Studio 2016. I'm going to pin it to the pin it to start. So it's going to show up right here on that start menu. So we'll come back to that later. But now we need to install the other thing. And let's see, that was, I lost my README file here. Okay, the quick start guide. All right, so SQL Server Express 2016. The default one, if you just go straight to Microsoft and look for SQL Server Express, it'll be 2017. But right now, I'd rather you stay on the same version we're on, 2016. And so that's this 2016 Service Pack 1 Express right here. So we'll click download, and that'll do something similar. Save it, run it, say yes, it's okay to install it. And I just choose basic, agree to to everything right here. That's fine to install it right there. So I click install. And I don't think there's going to be any other questions it's going to ask at this point until it finishes the installation. So same thing. This one actually takes a little longer, I think, than the Visual Studio one. But I'm going to hit pause, and I'll see you once it's finished. Okay, that didn't take as long as I thought it would. Obviously didn't take as long you watching this because I had it on pause that whole time, but I think it was only uh, 5 or 10 minutes at the most, or whatever. Um, so anyway, this is the it's done. You can it, if you want to know the name of your SQL server, you can find it by well, it says it right here, SQL Express. But uh, if you click Connect Now, this shows you the name up here. This is the name of your machine backslash SQL Express, but that's not how we're gonna. I mean, you could use that as your thing you point to get to the server in there, but you don't need to. So, I just want to point that out to you. So I'm going to close this installation right here, and I'm going to go. Um, yes, I want to exit. I want to go back to GitHub BVCMS again and see what the next step is. So we've installed both of these. It says get the cloning URL for the GitHub BVCMS source code repository. And that's where we are at GitHub BVCMS. So this is we're at that in our browser. Click the green clone or download button in the upper right part of the page and copy that link. So let's go up here. There it is, the green clone or download. I click that, and here's this link right here, and this thing allows it to copy to the clipboard. So I click that, and it's on the clipboard. And so I'm done. I'm done with the browser now. Oh, I shouldn't have been because it tells you what to do next. So hold on. GitHub BVCMS. Um, okay, we've got the link on the clipboard. Start Visual Studio. So I'm going to go down here to start up Visual Studio. This will be the first time it started since I installed it. And here we go. All right, you don't need to sign in to do all this stuff. I mean, you can, but I'm going to say not now, maybe later. And I'll just take all the defaults here. Preparing for first use. So this takes it says a few minutes. Um, so on the happen chance, no, it didn't take that long. Here it comes. All right, so it's up. Um, I was going to say I was going to put it on pause, but this started right up. So so now there's no database on your. I mean, there's no Touchpoint database or BVCMS database on your machine yet, and the application is not on your machine yet. So we're going to go to Team Explorer. Let me go back to here and I'll show you. It says Start Visual Studio on the right side. Click the tab under Team Explorer here. So I'm going to go. There's Team Explorer. So this brings up Team Explorer, and then back on the browser it says under local Git repositories, click Clone. So back over here, here's local Git repositories. I'm going to click this Clone button. And the yellow there is where I put that URL I copied to the clipboard right here. So I right click and say paste, and there it is, github.com BVCMS/BVCMS git, and I click clone. All right, so that's pulling it down from GitHub and installing it on your machine and in Visual Studio because you'll be able to start it straight from here after it's finished downloading. So going back here to just take a look at the rest of these things. Okay, once it's cloned, we're going to find the CMS Web Solution file, and that'll be in the Solution Explorer, which is here now. So it's finished cloning. So here it is. Here's Solution Explorer. It opened that up automatically, and you see this CMS Web Solution. This is just a directory of everything in there. So I'm going to open up the solution by clicking on this CMS Web solution here. So double click that. It's going to load up all the requirements as well, the libraries it uses and all that kind of stuff. There are a bunch of libraries that are open source libraries that are required by BVCMS, and they will get installed when we first run this thing. They're called NuGet packages, and you don't have to worry about installing any of those. It all happens automatically here under Visual Studio once you get ready to go. But let's go back to the browser here, and it says that we did all right. So we've got it open. CMS Web is now open. It says find and edit the web config file in the CMS Web folder, and then do these various things here. So I'm going to go down here under the CMS web folder, scroll all the way to the bottom of that, and there's the web config file it said. So I double click that, and it's going to bring it up in the editor of Visual Studio. And down here at the bottom are the things we're going to be editing right here. So this DB server, it says use local or SQL Express. Local is if you install a full version of SQL Server on your machine. We're gonna use this SQL Express right here. So I'm gonna copy that /SQL Express, and then I'm gonna put it right here and replace that local in there. So there's SQL Express, and it says, let's see what else it says on here. So um, we did the DB. All right, so we've done the DB server. It says for DB server, if you've installed a full version, use local. Otherwise, use the .SQL Express here. So we've done that. The host values is the name you want to call the database without the CMS underscore in front of it. And it says if you want to create a database with 150 test records in it, which is nice for playing around with, it's 150 people records and so forth, and a few other things that are already populated. You can just play with it at that point and run searches and queries and things like that on those 150 records. So I'm going to copy this test DB because that's what I want. Otherwise, you use the one that anyone you want to other than test DB, and it'll create a database called that. So going back over here, here is the default is Bellevue for Bellevue Baptist Church, the original church that started this project. So I'm going to paste in the test DB here instead. So that's a special name. It knows that it's going to create one a database that's got 150 records in it when you do that. So saving this web config out there. Now all I got to do now, according to this thing right here, it says the SQL Server database should be running, and we just installed it, and it should be running. I agree. Click play button in the main toolbar to launch BVCMS. And it says the first time you start up the system, it will create and populate a starter database, and then we're going to get to the login screen, and we'll come back and look at that in just a minute here. So here's the play button here. So it's going to start it up in Microsoft Edge. This is a web type application, so I'm going to click that. And the first thing it does is it restores all the NuGet packages from NuGet, so all those libraries are being downloaded. And it's going to compile the application and launch an IIS Express, an Internet Information Server Express, which is a host for the you'll be able to go to it with a browser, and it's going to pick its own local host configuration when it starts up. So build started. Looks like it's building fine so far, and now it's working on CMS Web. So there's really not much you need to do other than change those two little web configurations. Hopefully this will work. Okay, it looks like things are getting started here. All right, starting the web server, local host, and this is the port. It's normally port 80, but for debugging purposes, it uses a high numbered port. And this is just a random number, less than 64,000, I think, or whatever the maximum port number on a system is. So it's going to use that, which is no problem. And it's creating the database now. That's what it's doing. So normally it starts up much faster than this, but the first time it's got to create and populate that database. So it's running a bunch of, and so you see it's doing a bunch of stuff in here, working on creating that database. And so once it's created, it'll take you to the login page. And all right, there it is. So that didn't take too long, a minute or so. And so now if you go back to the browser, it'll tell you what your credentials are. So here's the page we were looking at. All right, so once the login screen appears, enter the default username and password and click login. So admin and BVCMS are the default username and password. And oh, it's the other tab on the browser. Here we go. So admin and BVCMS. Click sign in. It says, would you like, I'm not going to say the password because we got to change it anyway. BVCMS is still the current password because it wants you to change the password after you use that first set. Uh, and then the new password, pick up whatever you want. You do have to use at least 7 characters, and one of those characters has to be a special character like a $, exclamation mark, or a period. All right, so password changed successfully. Return to home. And we're running in debug mode, and so the first time it has to compile these pages and so forth, the first time it visits any one page. So uh, we're running here. I'm going to the basic search page, and this is just the list of the 150. Actually, it's not quite 150, but it's the list of people that are in the database. So if I go look at Retta Abrams, these are not real people and not real addresses and not real anything for that matter. I mean, the phone numbers may get you somewhere, but it's not a real phone number that we know anything about. Um, so anyway, so there's Rita's page. You can see her involvement here. You can see her profile, member profile, and so forth. That page takes a while to compile the first time. The first time someone visits the page, it'll be cached from there on out. But so there it is, and uh, I'll let you go from there. It's up to you to figure out what to do next, and you can read the documentation. Going back to the tab. Oops, I closed it. GitHub BVCMS BVCMS. Let's go to the bottom. It says using BVCMS. Go to the Touchpoint software documentation. So we've got like 600 pages of documentation in there. There's a contents, there's an index if you want to use that, uh, and so forth. Anyway, that's it. Let me know if you have any problems. Talk to you later. Bye.